Hello and welcome to Talking About My Generation. I'm Herbert Ricardo. I'm here with Alicia Vassar. And we today, it's our Friday time together. And we today are going to talk about how we kind of started this podcast and what was the whole idea behind it. And it's been pretty neat. We're going through some growing pains. It's a new way of communicating and connecting this way. So Alicia and I are going to try to share with you a little bit of how we got to this point, and maybe we can even offer some advice to individuals who might be looking to start their own podcast, right?
Sounds good.
So, Alicia, why don't you go ahead and share a little bit of how we kind of started this, maybe a little bit about how you and I kind of got together.
So the first time I ended up meeting with you was technically back in 2021 during the study abroad program I want to say it was the Czech Republic. Um, it ended up falling through, but we had a couple Zoom meetings, so I had known your face at least. So when I started taking classes, I was like, okay, I remember having him there. Um, so I had you for one of my organizational management classes, and then finally we had an in-person class, and that one was just it was so amazing. But before that, I believe we did the Soaring workbook, which had us directly working together with each other, and that was the first time I'd worked on a creative project. So it was really nice having someone to help me introduce me to this new form of I guess, creative input, but
Yeah,
also an
yeah. Let me
opportunity
just
that
kind of
was
let me
really
just kind of jump in. So basically, what I did is I wanted one of my students to kind of help me with this particular workbook. And I put it out there, and some people responded, you responded, and then, we talked a little bit about it. And that's a little bit of how uh, relationships are built, right? You put something out there, people respond, and that's kind of how we started. Where you said, "Sure, I'd like to do that," and we talked a little bit about it, and you got the project, and we worked on that together. And yeah, and then from there, as you were just stating, you came into one of my face-to-face classes, and we got to know each other, and again, that's part of, even though we're uh, doing this, you're in a particular location, I'm in a different location. Initially, we started through a human contact, right?
yes,
And
definitely.
that's kind of. I'm going to go ahead and just pause this for 1 second because I got a call coming in.
No, here, Biscuit, he's screaming in the background.
Your dog is in the background.
Yeah, so he's starting to do little barks, and I'm like, "Hey, buddy."
That's great. That's great. And that's part of what happens here too, right? I mean, I had to get this phone call in the middle of this, our podcasting over here, but I think that's pretty neat. Okay, so kind of we'll go back to basically
I
what we
I
were.
think it was really important that we technically had a lot of time, what, over at least over a year of experience, whether that be online, meeting in person, working together. We had different forms of actually working together to where it kind of grew that repertoire really fast.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. I think, for us to be able to be comfortable in this forum, we certainly have to feel comfortable, in our, personal relationship and interaction. So you're absolutely right. And, that's one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit about, that an individual who wants to start either an individual or wants to work with somebody, make sure that you both are on the same page. Make sure that you've got a pretty good idea of what you're wanting to accomplish, what you really want to say. Um, that is so important because if you're not, then you're not going to understand each other quite as well, and that'll certainly come out, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So we had class together, and we built that relationship, and then how did we come up with this whole idea for a podcast?
Uh, the idea of the podcast, we kind of I think it was in that in-person class that we kind of first got that back and forth speaking, and also the understanding generational wise, like how there's a difference in the way that we're going to understand and the way we're going to view certain subjects. So I think that started off where we had really good conversations. And then once I had graduated, we ended up speaking, and you brought up how you were interested in talking about a podcast. And I personally been told like multiple times, a lot of people have told me like, hey, you have a lot of, good opinions, you're articulate, you should do something like that. So I was like, this is a great opportunity. I can work with someone I've worked with before that I trust and I love working with. And I get to try this new creative endeavor. So I was okay with like jumping in. I want to know from your perspective of when you first thought about it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you're completely right on point there, Alicia. The whole idea is I'm teaching in a class and I'm decades older than my students. And a lot of what happens is there's sometimes there's a disconnect, and sometimes, and obviously what I'm trying to do is make that connection where some of the ways that, and I teach business, some of the ways that business was being conducted 30, 40 years ago is completely different to how it is today. And a lot of the students want to know, sure, how was it before, but then how do we apply to it today? So in order for that to happen, we have to have a conversation. We have to have a conversation about our generations. We have to have a conversation about what are our wants today versus what were the wants back many, decades ago. And some of them are going to be similar, but some of them are going to be different. So I think that's where this whole idea of talking about my generation, I'm talking about my generation, you're talking about your generation, which is your generation is my generation, right? And so in that sense, what we're doing is we're taking topics, hopefully that are interesting to you and I. We talked a little bit about social media. We talked a little bit about traveling, as you had mentioned. We talked a little bit about something that's pretty constant in our news environment right now. We talked a little bit about tariffs, right?
Mhm.
So we've got topics there that influence or affect us, me, my age, and also you with yours. And hopefully, in the interaction and the conversation that we have with each other, others can benefit from it. And I think that's what we were talking about, whether or not, we benefit when you and I are talking. And we're wondering that can someone else benefit from our conversations? And that's kind of how the podcast came about. The fact that maybe others can benefit from the conversations that you and I are having, right?
No, I totally agree. And I think another thing that kind of helped for us in making the podcast kind of work is we had a lot of those shared interests. So even knowing from our personal generations, we're very much interested on how culture affects. Like I know you explained that you're kind of a cusper for your generation, so you have a very unique perspective. I've been around my aunts growing up who were millennials, so I have a very interesting perspective of like seeing how just that about a decade difference between me and them made a difference. And then seeing my younger, siblings or god siblings who are now Gen Alpha. And it's so see, it's speaking with someone who understands those concepts, is interested in that. I think that kind of really helped with us and overlapping, and obviously the kind of premise of the podcast.
Right, right. Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. So, and I'm going to just mention a couple of things just for individuals who are interested in putting together a podcast. As you can tell, people, and if you see some of our first podcasts, you're going to notice hopefully some of the changes and some of the awkwardness
Mhm.
that we went through, and we kind of knew that we are going to go through this. That's one of the great things about learning. Not everybody is perfect at something once they at the beginning, right? And everything else. But there are a couple of things that I want to make sure that I just mention. One of the first things is make sure that you have an environment that you enjoy. In other words, whether it's someplace at your home, wherever the other area happens to be, but make sure you feel good and you feel comfortable in that. It's got to be a quiet place where you're not going to get too many disruptions or any disruptions, actually. Okay. We want to make sure that there's enough light. uh, you'll notice that there's a couple of different environments that Alicia and I are in. I'm here in our kind of like office area and innovation environment. So this is one. Obviously, you see a lot of lighting here, and then of course I've got my little office in my house. But make sure that you've got that environment. Also, you want to be in an environment where sound doesn't bounce all over the place and it sounds tinny. You want to have enough, maybe carpet, or the room small enough that it gives you a slightly richer sound. Now, of course, professional environments are going to sound a lot better. Don't worry too much about that, especially if you're starting out. If you're starting out, you're trying a little bit. So don't think that the first couple of podcasts are going to be perfect. By far, they will not be. Right. And we talked a little bit about this with
Would you
your environment.
say quality of like what you're using? Because I know a lot of times uh the audio quality can have a big difference. Even a very cheap mic sounds a lot better than, for me, when I first started, I used what was integrated into my laptop, which is great for working and stuff. But when thinking about a podcast, it's I think it's really good to think about purchasing a webcam that's a decent quality, a mic, even if they're lower, cheaper.
Yeah, yeah, great. One of the things that sometimes the mic and the cam in your computer might work fine, or on your phone if that's what you're using. Okay, but as you want to increase the quality of the sound, once you want to increase the quality of the visual environment, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money. You don't spend a lot, but you're going to have to spend a little bit. I'm going to say probably about $150 maybe on a mic, and maybe about $100 on a cam. Again, you can spend a lot more money, and three or four or $500 on a mic, and a more expensive cam system. But just make sure that you're not spending too much money, because you're also focusing a lot on designing your podcast itself. What's the topic going to be? The relationship. So all of that is all encompassing. But again, your environment is important. So make sure that you do spend a little bit of time. And of course, you can go on YouTube, and there's so many different support individuals who are a lot more advanced than you and I are on doing that. This is just something that we recognize by us doing our little bit of research, that we recognize light is really good. This is one of the things that if you can see Alicia, of course, looking beautiful with all the light on there. I need a little bit more light coming in directly on me, but that's okay. And we wanted to be able to show the difference on here. So just making sure that your environment is something comfortable for you is going to be important. Alicia. Again, I think that's something that we want to make sure that everybody's aware of. So then the next thing I want to do is talk about topics, and um, you kind of alluded a little bit to how we pick topics,
Mhm.
but maybe share a little bit more about how we pick topics.
So topics were a lot harder than I was expecting, because I was like, there is so many things to talk about, but I didn't realize there's so many things to talk about. That can kind of be overwhelming. So we kind of had to break it down the first time to where you kind of gave a list of, I think, some topics, and then we looked at where we overlapped and things that we liked. So I know one of them was tech, current events. We were really interested, like the tariffs. And then we did one on travel as well, because I mean, you have tons of experience. We had met through a study abroad program. So I thought overlapping interests. But now it's kind of gone, I think, a little bit more different to where it flows naturally, to where we'll have a conversation. One of us will bring up something, and usually we'll start a conversation to try to see if there's something there. And if we keep going and we're not having an issue like getting that flow going, we started naturally just going, okay, that sounds like that'll be a good topic. Okay, we're able to discuss it and go through it. There's something here.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. It was really neat that, I was thinking about what are some of the things that I'm interested in and what are some of the things that I'm interested in talking to um, Gen Zs about. And of course, you also, say, okay, well, what are some of the topics that you're interested in? So yeah, we made that list of, 50 different topics that maybe that we're interested in and that might be on in various different podcasts. And then we kind of targeted each one of these, and we said, well, out of these 50, come up with 10. So we then came up with 10, and out of the 10, let's come up with five, and out of the five, let's come up with three, and out of the three, let's come up with one. So it was quite systematic, and now what we're able to do is we're able to expand on that. And what we do is at the beginning of the week, you and I try to figure out, well, what are we going to talk about on Friday? And again, we have a process, and again, what's really good about it is that it's kind of give and take, and you've got some ideas on what you want to talk about. I do, and then we just kind of hash it out and say, okay, this Friday we'll talk about this one, and then next Friday we'll talk about the next one, and it's kind of the I like to use the term the abundance mentality, right?
Mhm.
So there's plenty of time. So if we come up with a couple of topics. Hey, we don't have to do my one this time. We can do it, next week, whatever it happens to be. So I don't have to worry about it. This is the only time that we can do it. There's
Mhm.
plenty of times. There's plenty of Fridays, and we can get that done. And I think that's important. That's important to that relationship between each other. That you're not saying, well, I just want to do my topic. I want to do my. It's got to be something that we both feel important enough that we want to share information on,
And
right?
you can see that because I know if a lot of people, if they're stuck in a conversation they don't want to be in, that flow for the conversation's not going to go as natural as what we're looking for.
Yeah. No, exactly, exactly. And again, we want um, individuals who might be watching this to get something out of it. And so if we're finding that it's a bit of a strain on us, then that'll certainly move that way too. So, no, very good, very good. Um, all right. So I'm going to see, I think I've covered some of the things here that I wanted to talk about. Um, how about time? One of the things that we're trying to determine is how long the podcast might be. Would it be 10 to 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, right? And it seems like as we get into our flow, we end up somewhere around 35 to 40 minutes. Isn't that what we seem to be doing?
Yeah, it naturally ends up going to that point where it starts to either peter out, and then we usually look over and yeah, it's about 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, and at this point, what we're doing is we're doing weekly, right? We're actually recording on Fridays, and this is something that seems to work pretty good for us. Again, our time frame, right? You've got a good time frame of Friday late mornings through early afternoon, and I have that same availability. And again, that's part of the process and making sure that you both have a time that you're not pressed. It's not something
Mhm.
that I only have that one um, hour. I only have that 1 45 minute in the middle of the day.
Definitely.
That we have time in between, so that we feel comfortable enough that it's our time spending with each other, right?
Yeah, I specifically committed a day because I wanted to make sure I had enough freedom to, if I have to kind of do some research before or kind of, uh, I wanted to make sure that I had enough time that I didn't feel like a pressure because that's what I think makes really good in natural conversations is when you have the time to be able to have them. Um, so I set aside Friday and I was lucky enough that that day I don't have anything any work wise, so I'm pretty flexible. So even if you have a little bit of some restrictions around the day, we have enough hours within the day that we can move it around.
Right, right. And there are times that uh, I'm busier on Fridays and times where I'm not quite as busy, but I try to figure out a time and we've tried to carve out, and usually it's right after lunch. We usually do about a 1 o'clock time. On
Hmm.
this particular time, we determined that 10 o'clock seemed to work pretty well, 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's part of it. And I think this is what we're trying to help individuals understand, that it's an opportunity to share your common interests with each other, but then also feel very relaxed that you're not trying to force it. And there's no doubt about it. At the beginning, you're gonna feel that way. I kind of felt that way the first couple of times that we did it,
It's
because
definitely going to feel unnatural, and there's that learning curve. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And but I want to be able to part of my craft is teaching. So I want to also be able to show that, things start off, a little rocky. It's almost like when I get my students to write a paper and they say, well, I'm not good at writing paper. I go, that's right. That's okay. Nobody's an expert or perfect right at the beginning, but you write enough papers, not that anybody wants to do that. Um, but towards the end you get better at it, right? and
You
um,
do.
and so this is also a process. I think you even put down, it's a great cognitive process, and I
Mhm.
loved when you said that, because that's another thing that I always enjoy about you. You love to read, and you love to think. You're very inquisitive, and part of what we do here is we're sharing ideas, we're sharing thoughts, we're trying to put it in a way that makes sense to us, and that's part of what we're here for, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, good. Well, I think we have shared with with everyone a little bit of how we kind of got started, and it's been, now it's been about 6, 7, 8 weeks, 2 months at it, and
Wow.
I've thoroughly enjoyed the time with you, Alicia, and
Mhm.
and the process of doing this. So this is our number 6, but it might be the first one that we actually turf out so that everyone can see.
Mhm.
And I'm anxious to hear some of the feedback on what we get for it.
No, I can't wait. Even without the creative process of being able to get feedback and hone a skill, it's just the value I see out of, like I said, the cognitive process, but also being able to have valuable conversations. I think you provide a lot of great insight. And I think I also provide a great amount of insight from a fresh perspective, from a younger, more curious perspective that mesh really well. And I think it's a valuable experience as an art form, but also just a conversation between us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I didn't share too much of this, but there's no doubt this is this is so rich for me. It's a learning process for me because the more I understand you and your generation, this is whom I'm teaching. So the more I learn from you, the more we understand each other, I find the better I will be as a professor in the classroom. So no doubt that's why we're here, and this is what I get out of it too. Well, that's wonderful. Alisha, thanks so much. I look forward to our conversations throughout the week, and I look forward to next Friday. I don't know what our topic is, but I'm sure we're going to come up with something between now and the next few days. So
Mhm.
have a really great weekend, and I'll see you later on next week.
Yeah, Tuesday. It's a long weekend.
That's right. That's right.
Memorial Day.
So yes, yes. So enjoy. Have a great one, and thanks to all of you watching. All right. Take care. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We look forward to next week as we cover another cool and fun topic. This podcast was produced by Three Lions Production and sponsored by Con Consulting and Training. Until next time, keep it between the lines.